Hello, everyone. I'm Earl Possert, the International Marine Turtle Coordinator for the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And on behalf of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, the National Marine Fisheries Service, and the U.S. delegation to the Indian Ocean Southeast Asian Memorandum of Understanding, I want to wish you all a very happy World Sea Turtle Day. As we know, sea turtles are great connectors. They connect countries, they connect many of us around the world to work together because of their vast migrations, their complex life cycles. We have had a chance to work together with partners all over the world. There's much to celebrate on World Sea Turtle Day. And one of those things is the Marine Turtle Conservation Act Fund that was created in 2004, which has allowed the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service and the U.S. government to support sea turtle conservation projects all over the world. And we especially are working in the Indian Ocean Southeast Asia region with many projects to support the Indian Ocean Southeast Asia MOU. And we look forward to continuing to do that. As you know, as we have much to celebrate, we also have many challenges out there. But today we're going to talk about what we have to celebrate. For example, how are we connected with the Southeast Asia MOU, being here on the other side of the world? Well, for example, the West Pacific leatherbacks that have major nesting colonies in Indonesia, the adults, the nesting females, migrate all the way to the west coast of continental coast of the United States and forage in the waters off of California. So we know that no one country can conserve sea turtles alone. It really does take collaboration among many countries. And that's why the Indian Ocean Southeast Asia MOU was brought into being in 2001. The U.S. has been a party ever since. Sea turtles are great connectors. They're ambassadors of the ocean. And not only do they connect countries, but they have brought different generations together to conserve sea turtles. For example, Archie Carr, the grandfather of sea turtle conservation, especially in the Western Hemisphere, has a national wildlife refuge named after him. And I had the good fortune earlier in my career to work with, to meet Dr. Carr, but to also meet many of his students who are now out in the world conserving sea turtles. And you're going to hear more about Archie Carr Refuge in a little bit. But right now, I think I've said enough. I just want to thank all of you around the world that are sea turtle conservationists, that are partners with the Fish and Wildlife and the IOSEA, but also all you sea turtle lovers out there that are volunteers or just appreciate sea turtles. Thank you for all you're doing. There's much to be done, but today we're celebrating all that has been done. And I think sea turtles have a bright future. So all the best to you. And I think I'll just say goodbye.
My name is Anne Marie Lauritsen, and I am with the U.S. NOAA Fisheries Office of Protected Resources. Along with the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, sea turtles are a part of our conservation commitment. Our Species in the Spotlight initiative is a program to bring greater attention and focus our efforts to protect 9 species most at risk of extinction and put them on a path to recovery. One of our species in the spotlight is the Pacific leatherback sea turtle. This video highlights a few recovery efforts by us and our partners internationally. I hope you enjoy, and happy World Sea Turtle Day.
So we will start the grid in the south. We'll work our way north as much as we can and then get you on the second animal when you're ready. Aspen out. No visual on that circle. Just sit right on the surface. The position is 37, 33.9, 122, 43. It's been going down for probably the same like 4 or 5 minutes at a time. So she's boat length ahead, 12 o'clock.
On the bow. Pull! Pull, 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 pull! Good, that's good.
Okay, joining me now is Dr. Llewellyn Ehrhart, Professor Emeritus from the University of Central Florida and founder of the UCF Marine Turtle Research Group. Good morning, Doc.
Good morning, Anne Marie, and good morning, everyone, and happy World Sea Turtle Day, and happy Archie Carr birthday. I'm proud to say that I knew Dr. Carr personally, and we called one another friend, and he was very instrumental and helpful in the early development of my sea turtle program, which goes back 50 years.
Wow, yeah, thank you so much for joining us. It is a real privilege to have you here. So can you tell us a little bit about the beginning of how you came to know Archie Carr and his work with turtles?
Yes, I think I can. Of course, I was a young, very naive assistant professor just out of graduate school. And again, this was 50 years ago, 1970, and came to Florida. And of course, as a vertebrate zoologist, I knew of Dr. Carr. I knew of his work at Tortuguero, but I also knew about the organization that he and his wife were had founded and were very prominent in. That was the Florida Defenders of the Environment. And very quickly after I got to Florida, I became affiliated with that organization, and that helped me to get to know Dr. Carr. Also, a little shortly after that, in 1972, there was an organization called the Florida Committee on Rare and Endangered Plants and Animals. A group of biologists from Florida got together. Dr. Carr was one of them. And I remember particularly one meeting in the Ocala forest where I had an extensive conversation with Dr. Carr. We talked about everything from rusty mud salamanders to muskrats to sea turtles. And so I did know Dr. Carr. I got to know him before, and this was before I ever got interested in sea turtles. Just a short while later, in the early summer of 1973, I was doing vertebrate zoology research on the Kennedy Space Center on the east coast of Florida. And one day, quite unexpectedly, and as a surprise to me and a lot of people, I discovered sea turtle tracks on the beach at the Space Center, literally in the shadow of the rockets and the launch pads. And in other words, it was clear and undeniable that loggerheads were nesting on the Space Center beaches, and we didn't know that before. We didn't know it at all, and I recognized the importance of it. And the first thing I did was correspond with Dr. Carr about it, and seeking his advice of how to go about studying this rookery at the Space Center. But more specifically, I asked him for turtle tags. And so the fact is that was the beginning of our research, sea turtle research program. And it was important because, I think partly because it led us to that region of the state of Florida, which is pretty much now recognized as the most productive sea turtle nesting in the whole state, and therefore the whole country. And in so doing, in going down there, we began to realize that on a beach a little bit south of us, a little bit south of the Space Center, at a place that everyone in the sea turtle community, the international sea turtle community, began to refer to as Melbourne Beach. Melbourne Beach has become pretty famous because of course, the numbers that we began to report right from the beginning there in 1982 was when we started there. And the numbers we began to report were pretty prodigious. And everyone sort of got to know that beach as Melbourne Beach. Now, of course, and that's the story that we're going to talk about here, it has become the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, a national wildlife refuge dedicated to the protection of marine turtle nesting habitat, and has grown in significance by leaps and bounds. It's really I know that we have sea turtle conservation problems in many parts of the world. We have a lot of work to do, but it is true that on the east coast of Florida and at the Carr Refuge, we have a lot to celebrate on this World Sea Turtle Day and on Archie Carr's birthday.
Yeah, the formation of the Archie Carr Refuge is just a great success story. Can you tell us a little bit about how the data that you collected was critical in the formation of the Archie Carr Refuge?
Well, of course, all of our national wildlife refuges in this country are under the umbrella of the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. And we have always worked closely with the Fish and Wildlife Service. And as we began to gather data, again, starting in 1982, we made sure that the Fish and Wildlife Service, especially a biologist named Earl Postert, was aware of the rather astounding results that we were getting, and kept in touch with him all through the decade of the 80s. It was through that decade that we did a whole lot of really physical, tedious field work, all night on the beach, tagging turtles and marking nests, and a good part of each day also doing nest surveys, and for month in and month out and year in and year out, until the data really that we gathered showed to, well, the Fish and Wildlife Service and the sea turtle conservation community writ large, that this was really probably and undoubtedly the best loggerhead nesting beach on the entire eastern rim of the Atlantic Ocean, maybe the entire rim of the Atlantic Ocean. And there was, of course, some remnant green turtle nesting also at the time. Earl and others took these data and folded them into a proposal to the U.S. Congress. That's how refuges get created in this country. It takes a passage of a legislative bill in the Congress. And it's a little sort of a sidelight here, but I think it's interesting. One of the people who, this proposal took our data, put it together, and to form a proposal to create a new national wildlife refuge dedicated to the protection of marine turtle nesting habitat. And one of Florida's senators, he's an ex-governor of Florida, Bob Graham. At the time, he was a senator in Washington, D.C. And it turns out that when Graham was an undergraduate pre-law student at Gainesville in at the University of Florida, he took Dr. Carr's field ecology course. So he was familiar with Dr. Carr and Dr. Carr's wife, Marjorie, who is also an outstanding conservationist. And so we didn't have, it wasn't hard to, and he could also, Senator Graham had come down to Melbourne Beach several times, gone out on the beach with us and tagged turtles, and was aware that it was a special place. And he took that legislation and shepherded it through the legislative process. And pretty soon, by about 89 or 90, we had authorization of this new National Wildlife Refuge for sea turtles. He also, by the way, I'm not sure if our viewers know this or have ever thought about this, but the Fish and Wildlife Service usually does not name national wildlife refuges after persons. And in this case, we all thought it was appropriate to name this great Florida turtle nesting habitat refuge for Dr. Carr. And Senator Graham certainly agreed, and he carried that ball as well. And now, much to the pleasure of all of those of us who have and ever worked there and have had the privilege of working there, we are also pleased that they did name the refuge after Dr. Archie Fairley Carr Jr.
Well, our theme for this hour is connections. So through that connection that you had with Archie Carr, you have then gone on to influence so many students who have gone on to continue your great conservation legacy. What advice would you give to people around the world, the IOSEA community, who are working on sea turtle conservation?
First, let me take just a minute to also remind the viewers that the Carr Refuge has expanded and includes undeveloped natural lands on the barrier island, oak hammocks and scrub and other habitats that are good habitat for hundreds of other wildlife species. So that's the outgrowth of this good thing. As far as advice to others, this may seem a little bit strange to some, but one of the things, remember, I've been doing this for 50 years, and one of the things that I've observed is that it's very often the kind of data that you get by rather raw physical field research, spending a lot of time on the beach at night, tagging and marking nests, a lot of time on the beach during the day, doing nesting surveys, getting nest counts and nesting success rates and hatching success rates, but it's nothing but hard work. There's nothing very sophisticated or glamorous about it, but I've found that the kind of data that you get from that kind of rough physical field work is the kind that often produces results that are most beneficial to the conservation of marine turtles. I'm not putting down more sophisticated forms of research. Certainly the genetic work that's been done has been valuable, and satellite transmitting and emitter work and all of those things. But and we use them to enhance our conservation efforts. Yes, we do. But the fact is that I've seen that very often it's those numbers that you get from the day in and night out field work on the beach that produce the conservation results. And of course, the Carr Refuge is the example of that. It's all of those data that we produce that then produce the legislation to authorize this new and very, very wonderful wildlife refuge. Wonderful in terms of the of worldwide sea turtle conservation. The Carr Refuge is a real important item. So that's the example of what I'm talking about.
Wonderful.
So let me wish all of you again a happy World Sea Turtle Day. And let me repeat that I'm so proud that I was able to know and work with Dr. Archie Carr all those years ago, and that he and I called one another friend.
Thank you, Doc. I'm so glad you're here to celebrate Archie Carr's birthday with us and World Sea Turtle Day. It's good to have you.
Yes.
We have Gustavo Stahelin from the University of Central Florida Marine Turtle Research Group. Good morning, Gustavo. How are you?
I'm good. Good morning. How are you doing?
Good. Well, Gustavo is a PhD candidate from the University of Central Florida Marine Turtle Research Group. Can you tell us a little bit, Gustavo, about what brought you into sea turtle research on the Archie Carr Refuge?
Well, I started working with sea turtles about 15 to 16 years ago in Brazil, where I'm from. So I worked in Projeto Tomar for about 10 years. And during that time, right, I was building my idea of like what I wanted to do and developing ideas of like becoming a grad student, going to my PhD. So then when I read a lot about the refuge and of course, other important areas in the world, there was this opportunity at some point to come here to work or at first, of course, to apply to the University of Central Florida and to come work here. So that was like something I really wished for, and I was really hoping to get it. And I ended up coming here to the refuge. Happy Sea Turtle Day. And yeah, it's a hard work, but it's really worth it.
Great, thank you. Right now I have with us the Executive Director of Sea Turtle Conservancy, David Godfrey. Good morning, David.
Good morning, Anne-Marie. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. Thanks for joining us for this hour. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the Sea Turtle Conservancy?
Absolutely. And I just want to start by saying hello to all of the IOSEA countries and happy World Sea Turtle Day to everyone. It's my pleasure to join you just for a little bit and tell you about the Sea Turtle Conservancy's work. Well, the STC, as we're commonly known, has been working for about 62 years, doing lots of things ranging from sea turtle research. We monitor a number of very important sea turtle nesting beaches, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, and as well as a number of in-water foraging sites and developmental habitats for juvenile sea turtles. And we take that science and use it to shape conservation education messaging and conduct a variety of educational programs for the general public and school kids, and even use that information to try to raise awareness and knowledge among elected officials and different government agencies that are making decisions that affect sea turtles and their habitats. So in that way, we really are taking research, shaping education, and then using that to try to influence policies to better protect the animal and their habitats. And in a kind of a fourth activity that we do that is largely unseen, but because we've been running these education programs for so long, we try to involve students, graduate students to join us on our project sites and really train them in how to properly monitor and protect sea turtles, or even conduct in-water work. So for many decades, STC has also been kind of a training ground for young aspiring sea turtle biologists and resource managers. So that's kind of in a nutshell what the STC is up to.
Oh, great. Thank you for that. So this hour, we're also focusing on Archie Carr and how he's influenced a lot of researchers and conservation projects throughout the world, as well as celebrating his birthday today. So can you tell us a little bit about how Archie Carr has influenced Sea Turtle Conservancy?
Well, I think even the word influenced Sea Turtle Conservancy isn't strong enough. He really was the entire impetus for the formation of the organization. All the way back in the mid-1950s, when Archie was a graduate zoology professor and scientist at the University of Florida, he was learning about this animal and the various threats to its survival, and also writing about what he discovered about the animal, and as he traveled around the world, the different cultures that he interacted with, and how sea turtles were important to them. And one of his seminal books was The Windward Road, which talked particularly about his travels in Central America, in Costa Rica, and the place Tortuguero. And that book was almost like Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, right? It was a call to action to help save sea turtles. And a number of people read that book and were so inspired by Archie's words and about the importance of this animal, not only to ecosystems, but to the cultural identity of people throughout the Caribbean, that they contacted Archie and said, hey, we want to support your work in some way. Let's form an organization. And Archie met with these philanthropists, and the organization that became the Sea Turtle Conservancy was born in that way. So literally inspired directly by Archie's research and his writing about that work. So when our organization was formed initially as the Caribbean Conservation Corporation, Archie was tapped as the scientific director of that organization. So we were founded under his scientific leadership, and he really shaped the direction of the organization. He set the agenda for what the STC would be working on, and established the very long-term research and conservation program at Tortuguero, Costa Rica, which is one of the world's, maybe the world's most important nesting site for green turtles. And under his leadership, from the late 1950s until his death in the 1980s, STC grew and expanded the different projects it was working on, became this training ground for young biologists, which of course was in line with his work as a professor. And Archie really started to develop a movement towards the protection of these animals that spread around the world. He was the first director of the Marine Turtle Specialist Group under the IUCN. He helped advocate for sea turtles to be included on CITES regulations to prevent their international trade. Because of course, one of the things he found was that a number of the species were being wiped out due to overconsumption. And so how the world was dealing with that, and some of the rules in place to avoid the over-harvesting, unsustainable use of sea turtles was a big part of his mission. And that mission helped form a lot of the earliest global policies to protect sea turtles. That came directly from Archie and directly from this organization, which is today the Sea Turtle Conservancy. So we are very much entwined with the legacy of Dr. Archie Carr. Our whole mission was established by him. We continue many of the very projects that he started. The work at Tortuguero is the longest continuous sea turtle monitoring and protection program in the world. And we're just very proud of that association, and honored to know that World Sea Turtle Day was established on Archie's birthday as a celebration of this man and the movement that he really started.
Thank you for explaining how much Sea Turtle Conservancy was influenced by Archie Carr. You mentioned some of the projects that Sea Turtle Conservancy now undertakes and carries out. Can you talk a little bit about some of those projects throughout the world?
Sure, absolutely. So as far back as the 1960s, we've been conducting an in-water monitoring program in collaboration with the Bermuda Aquarium and the Bermuda Zoological Society. That is the longest continuous in-water study of turtles in the world. And also a training ground for people to learn how to do that type of work. So Bermuda, Costa Rica, Panama, those are our largest sustained international programs. And of course, we're based in Florida, which is the most important nesting site for turtles in the United States. So of course, we're involved in many activities here, ranging from our advocacy for the Archie Carr National Wildlife Refuge, the only national refuge in the US created specifically for sea turtles and given the name Archie Carr in honor of our founder. So we conduct educational programs in the refuge and co-manage a facility there with the local county, Brevard County. We do training for young people in the school system to learn about sea turtles, and do a little bit of research in collaboration with UCF and other partners, particularly to study migration of turtles. This issue of studying migration is another one of the things that I think the Sea Turtle Conservancy is most known for today around the world. We use satellite telemetry to track turtles from at least half a dozen countries, and are learning incredible things about their migratory patterns, movements that of course can help shape conservation strategy. But we also use it as part of our educational programming, something we created called the Tour de Turtles. It's sort of a mock race among all the different turtles that we're tracking. Of course, the turtles don't know they're involved in a race, and it's just a symbolic thing, but hundreds of thousands of people around the world follow online as we track these turtles and convey really important information about the threats they're facing, ways people can get involved and support turtle conservation. And it's just another way that our research sort of molds right into some of our educational work and reaches people all around the world. So that's kind of a quick summary of the things we're doing. Anyway, again, proud to be continuing Archie Carr's legacy with a lot of this work.
Great. Yeah, Sea Turtle Conservancy really highlights some of those connections all around the world, different levels of government and academia, students, education through the internet. It's just amazing. Thank you for joining us. I appreciate you taking the time. Happy World Sea Turtle Day. We're very excited that you could join us here for our 1 hour of US launching off the World Sea Turtle Day. Thank you so much, David.
Thank you so much. And again, happy World Sea Turtle Day, everybody. Let's keep doing what we're doing, and together we can create a better future for these animals and their habitats and all marine life. So thank you very much.
We are talking with Dr. Karen Birnbaum this morning, Professor of Biology at the University of Central Florida and the Director of the Archie Carr Center for Sea Turtle Research. Good morning, Karen. Thank you for joining us.
Good morning, Anne Marie, and thank you for asking me to join you. This is a real treat to be able to reach out to everyone and help celebrate Dr. Carr's birthday and World Sea Turtle Day. World Turtle Day, I should say.
Thank you. Can you tell us how you came to know Dr. Archie Carr?
Sure. As an undergraduate, I went to Occidental College, and that school supported undergraduates to go do independent studies anywhere in the world. I'd always wanted to go to Galapagos, so I went there, stayed for 6 months. 2 of those months I was on an island, Santa Fe, that had no other human inhabitants. And to pass the time, I used to go and sit by the shoreline and watch sea turtles swim past. And they just fascinated me, the way they would come to the surface to breathe, and they just seemed to be creatures of 2 different worlds. So when I went back to college, I started reading all I could about sea turtles. And of course, it didn't take very long to realize that Archie Carr was the person to study with if you wanted to study sea turtles. So I applied and thank goodness was accepted at the University of Florida to study under Archie. And I've remained there ever since, rising through the ranks from a graduate student up to a distinguished professor in the Department of Biology, where I am now.
Wow, what a great opportunity. How did Dr. Archie Carr influence you and your work with sea turtles and research that you've done throughout the years?
I really consider myself blessed and inordinately lucky to have had Archie as a mentor. He is a wonderful individual, a brilliant scientist, and just a lot of fun to be with. He opened up so many opportunities to me for international field research and for learning about sea turtle conservation. And really importantly, he shared with me the joy of academic life and showed me through his own life the wonders of the intellectual freedom that an academic life gives you. And I've always been grateful for that. And in my 4 decades of academic life, I've considered that just a great, great gift. He also showed me by example how important it is to make other people feel good about themselves. I always thought that was one of Archie's greatest gifts, was that no matter who it was, no matter what their interests were, Archie would immediately just focus on them as if they were the only person present, and just make them feel good about themselves, the way he would interact with them. And then, of course, in terms of research and my research over my career, he was instrumental in so many ways. I think one of the greatest ways was that he arranged for me, for my doctoral research, to go live on the island of Great Anagua, which is the southernmost island in the Bahamas. I lived there for 1.5 years and conducted research on green turtles there. And that's remained my core study site ever since. So I went down last year for my 46th year of research on that population of immature green turtles on that island. So I have many, many friends there and many, many happy memories.
Yeah, that's wonderful. So the Archie Carr Center for Sea Turtle Research at the University of Florida, where you are the director, was established in recognition of the great work of Archie Carr. Can you tell us a little bit about the mission of the center?
Sure. The mission, in short, is to continue and build on Archie's great work. And we've done that in many ways. We followed his lead in maintaining a really active international program. And we study all species of sea turtles, but primarily we focus on green turtles, loggerheads, and hawksbills. We do this through working with international collaborators. We have a number of really close collaboration programs in places like Brazil and the Azores, Bahamas, many other countries, and working with our graduate students. Our graduate students are the heart of the center, just as they were when Archie was alive. And working with them to do the cutting edge research, both advancing our knowledge of biology of turtles, but also advancing our ability to conserve them is a great gift. And we have a wonderful group now of many graduate students who, of course, are Archie's academic grandchildren and great-grandchildren by this time. And hopefully we'll be producing some great-great-grandchildren in the near future. So that's really our emphasis, is continuing that line of work, emphasizing, continuing the work all around the world through our graduate students, many of whom are international students representing many countries, and they go back to their home countries and carrying this knowledge with them.
So our theme for this hour is connections. Now, the center plays this vital role in connecting sea turtle researchers throughout the world, the Sea Turtle Listserv, the tagging database, the online bibliography, just amazing. How do these key connections further sea turtle research and conservation worldwide? Can you give us some examples of how great this program has allowed these connections to occur?
Sure. I think one of the great things about Archie's early work was that he really established a wide international network of colleagues and collaborators. He knew this was something that one or two people couldn't do alone, and so he really reached out to colleagues. And there was such a level of mutual respect across national boundaries and across cultures in his early networking. And I really think that is what laid the foundation for the continuing culture in sea turtle biology and conservation of a very open, welcoming attitude or culture of accepting diversity. I think this is one of the real strengths of our greater community. And examples of this are common. I think every time I speak to someone who has come to one of our international sea turtle meetings for the first time, and these are meetings from people all over the world, up to 900 people attend these meetings each year. They're wonderful, wonderful gatherings. But every time I speak to somebody who is there for the first time, I almost always hear the same comment, which is, "You people are so friendly. You people are so embracing and welcoming. It's just a wonderful place. I was so nervous coming here, with all these big names in sea turtle biology, or all these many people that I didn't know. And I immediately feel at home." And it's that warmth and embracing nature of our community that I think has allowed us to accomplish great things internationally. And I really give Archie a lot of credit for that, for establishing that culture early on. And people have just adapted it and adopted it, and it's been maintained.
Yeah, it's really interesting. Through your connection with Dr. Archie Carr, you have then influenced so many students who have gone on to do sea turtle research and conservation throughout the world. But what advice or encouragement would you give to students just starting out in sea turtle conservation?
Well, I do have, in fact, I've been thinking about this lately, and I have 5 specific things to note. But I realized that I neglected to address some of the important aspects from your last question. So if you'll allow me to go back and pick up that thread for a moment. And that is another way in which Archie established a great network that's kept us all working together is he informally would give colleagues sea turtle tags, flipper tags in the early years. This was a system that Tom Harrison had initially set up in Sarawak, had played around with using cattle ear tags on clamping them onto sea turtle flippers. Archie took this up to a very important aspect of sea turtle research. So this is called tagging turtles. We attach these tags to their front flippers. They have a identification number on them, and then on the back of the tag is written the return address, so that people who find the turtle can tell us, how they found the turtle, what the condition was. And in that way, we've learned tremendous amounts about international migratory patterns of sea turtles and all that. But this started with just a very informal, somebody would say, boy, I'd love to try tagging turtles in my area. And Archie would say, oh, sure, here, I'll send you 100 tags and an applicator. And off they'd go in the mail. And some of those tagging programs that were established, 30 years ago are still going on today, that were started with a handful of tags from Archie. That program has now morphed into a very I don't know if I should say formal, but an established program called the Cooperative Marine Turtle Tagging Program, which we run out of our center with support from the U.S. National Marine Fisheries Service. Every year we distribute about 10,000 tags to dozens of tagging programs throughout the Atlantic, and we handle all of their data for them. And so in this way, we maintain this tremendous network of tagged turtles and can all learn from that together. And the last thing I want to mention is that my late husband, Alan Bolton, who was the associate director of the center, about 30 years ago established what we call Sea Turtle, a listserv that took Archie's informal network of correspondence to the higher technology level of the internet. And again, that's maintained to this day, has been responsible for rapid communication among our group for decades now. And we have about 70 countries represented and about 1,800 participants on that network. But getting back to your last question, Anne-Marie, the things that I would advise people interested in working in the field, getting into the field of sea turtle conservation and study their biology, I have 5 pieces of advice. One is to find mentors who will inspire you and support you. That's just been critical in my career and in so many other people's careers that I've seen. Another is to learn languages other than your native tongue. And here I do not speak from personal experience. I'm sharing this advice. This is something that I wish I had, a skill that I had. It's becoming more and more important. And I really encourage people to master other languages. The third is to read deeply and widely. Always pursue greater information of what's already been learned. And in that, you don't want to forget the classic studies. Read the classic studies. I can remember several times I would go to Archie all excited with what I thought was a new idea. And he would say, Bjorndal, read the classics, read the classics. And then he would go out and dig up a book or a paper that I hadn't seen that had already answered that question. And so that always rings in my ears. And I've shared that advice with all of my graduate students, is to read the classics so you don't repeat the work. Fourth, I think it's really important to learn how to nurture productive collaborations. And on the same hand, learn to cut short collaborations that are clearly not going to be mutually beneficial. But the importance of collaborations, I can't overemphasize. They bring great joy to your life if they work well, and tremendous progress in all of our undertakings. And then finally, I say find a life partner who will support you in everything you do. And if you have that, you're going to be a success. So thank you so much, Anne-Marie, for inviting me to join you all. And I wish everyone a very happy World Sea Turtle Day, and wish Archie Carr a very happy birthday.
Thank you for joining us as we celebrate World Sea Turtle Day and recognize the contributions of Dr. Archie Carr to global sea turtle conservation. Thank you for all you do for sea turtles. Happy World Sea Turtle Day.